Ladies and gentlemen, a very warm welcome to BookFlix Live, where successful authors become your mentors. The platform where we discuss about proven winning formulas to succeed in life by design. I'm extremely excited that today we are going to have our episode number 4 of BookFlix Live. Today, we will continue our discussion with the very amazing Mr. Joy King Birje. Today, I am extremely happy for the fact that Mr. Joy King Birje has agreed to join us live in spite of the fact that he is not keeping well. So, my dear friends, without any further ado, let's welcome our guest, Mr. Joy King Birje. Mr. Joy King Birje, warm welcome to BookFlix Live, episode number 4. And thank you for joining us live in spite of the fact that you are not keeping well.
Thank you for having me back on the show. It's a real pleasure. The response from your viewers, the previous episode was fabulous, and I hope that this episode is equally good for the viewers as well.
Mr. Joy, as we move ahead into today's show, let me start with my first question. The first question is, I have seen that many people struggle because they are constantly seeking approval from the others, or they're waiting for the perfect circumstances. They're waiting for the circumstances to be perfect before taking any action. Can you please explain why this mindset keeps so many talented people from achieving their highest potential, even when they have the ability to succeed in their lives? Over to you.
Yes, that is really interesting. When Sudipta sir and I were researching this chapter, we came across a lot of statistics, and there was something that honestly surprised us. We found that talent and ability aren't the main things that hold people back from success. Much more than that is the fact that people hold themselves back. You are the real barrier by being dependent on external conditions. Now, let me paint a picture of what this looks like in real life. Imagine someone who wants to start a business. Now, they might have a brilliant idea, they have the skills, they might even have money, but they'll keep on saying things like, I'll launch this when the economy gets better, or when I get full support from my family, or, the condition should be better. I'll need a few more connections in this industry. So, this is very, very common. And this is what is the meaning of external condition dependence. It's when you put your own life on hold because you're waiting for the world around you to give you their approval to move ahead. Essentially, the remote control of your life is being handed out to external circumstances. Now, what makes this mindset so dangerous, and why Sudipto sir and I wanted this to be right in the first few chapters, is because we feel logical about it. When someone says, I'm waiting for better market conditions, it sounds reasonable. It sounds like smart planning. But what is really happening is that you are just procrastinating. Think about it this way. If you've always waited for external approval, for conditions to be perfect, what are you doing? What you are doing essentially is that you're saying my dreams are less important, than other people's opinions or external circumstances. And that is a tough pill to swallow, but it is the truth. Such a person is always going to be late or procrastinate or never achieve what their goals or their vision is, because they'll always check with everyone else first. Before you make a decision about your career or your health or a relationship, you need consensus from others. You need this green light from everybody, from the universe. And that green light rarely comes, my friend, because there's always going to be someone who doesn't approve. There's always going to be some circumstance that is not perfect. And that is what your mindset becomes and it develops. It often comes from good intentions. Maybe you are raised to be considerate of others, to think before you act, do not be impulsive. And all of these are good values. But somewhere along the way, being considerate turns into being paralyzed. Thinking before acting turns into overthinking and never acting. And that is the perfect recipe for failure. In this book, Sudipto sir and I break down exactly how this pattern forms, and more importantly, how you recognize it yourself. You know, because most people who are living in this mindset, they don't even realize they are doing it. They think they are being responsible or strategic when they are stuck. And so we've identified the key traits of this dependency. And once you read it in the book, most people say that, oh my god, this is me. It's like suddenly seeing yourself clearly for the first time. One of the most common traits is seeking external approval for everything. We spoke about that. Now, getting advice is smart, but there's a huge difference between seeking counsel and seeking permission. You do not need validation for everything that you need to do, you just need guidance. And the moment you start depending on that guidance or validation or approval, that's a red flag. You feel powerless, you know and another problem is that this mindset creates a self-fulfilling kind of theme in your life. You end up believing that you're powerless. You stop trying to do things or take action the right way. And what is the result of that? Nothing is going to change. You're going to be stuck in that vicious cycle for years, decades, or sadly throughout your life. And that is why there's a need for this shift from external condition dependent to goal and core strength oriented, which is what is explored in this chapter. You need to know what your goals are, what your core strengths are, align them, and take positive action to achieve your values and your dreams. We walk you through exactly how to make this shift with specific exercises and strategies. And Sudipto sir and I want everyone to understand this, that the world isn't going to give you a permission to live your dreams. Your family might not fully understand your vision, the economy might never be perfect. But if you keep waiting for ideal conditions, you'll wake up one day and realize you've spent your whole life in the waiting room of your own potential. So it's time to stop being dependent on external conditions and start focusing on your goals and your core strengths. That's what this chapter is about.
Unlock the power of life without if. In Life Without If, we dive into powerful concepts that reshape the way we think and live. Role of if, a small word with a huge impact. It can free you or trap you. Dual nature of if can spark dreams or feed doubts you choose. Living by design. Create a life that reflects your true values. By choice, not by chance. Behavioral continuum. Every action lies on a spectrum. Awareness moves you closer to your best self. Intent versus actualization. Bridge the gap between dreams and reality with clarity and action. Joy King success model. Redefine success as inner fulfillment, not just outer achievements. Amplify positive ifs. Turn what if I fail into what if I fly. Minimize negative ifs. Break free from limiting beliefs and step into possibility. And versus or, life isn't about choosing either or. It's about embracing both and. Frenemism. Collaborate even with rivals to spark growth and innovation. Get ready to think bigger, act braver, and live with purpose.
That's truly amazing, Mr. Joy. Thank you so much for that. There cannot be any better explanation than this. Let me come to my second question. In your book, Stephen Hawking's story has been elaborated in a very, very insightful manner. In your book, Stephen Hawking's story has been explained in a very, very insightful manner. In fact, Stephen Hawking's story is one of the most inspiring examples of human determination in modern history. Despite being diagnosed with ALS at the age of 21 years old only, and given only few years to live in his life, he went on to revolutionize physics and become one of the most recognized scientists in the world. What specific lessons can our viewers learn from his transformation about focusing on inner strength, rather than external circumstances. Over to you.
Absolutely. When we were choosing real life examples for this book, Stephen Hawking's story was absolutely non negotiable. This had to be in here, because his journey illustrates the transformation from being dependent on external conditions to being goal and core strength oriented very powerfully. It's very undeniable. Now, just picture this, you're 21 years old, brilliant, studying at Cambridge, you have your whole life ahead of you. And then all of a sudden, what happens? You get diagnosed with ALS. That's a degenerative disease that's going to progressively take away your ability to move, to write, and eventually even to speak. And doctors tell you that you have maybe 2 or 3 years left. How do you respond to that? And for most people, this would become their entire identity. Everything would revolve around the disease. Every decision would be filtered through, but I'm sick. All the goals abandoned. I mean, what's the point? And that's what most people would do. But what did he do? Hawking went through that phase initially. He got depressed. He withdrew. He questioned whether there was any point in continuing his research. You know, and what happened after that? Something shifted. And this is the part that gives me chills every time I think about it. He made a decision. He decided that while he couldn't control his physical condition, he could control where he directed his mental energy. Instead of focusing on what was being taken away, what his body couldn't do anymore, he zeroed in on what remained his mind, his ability to think, to imagine, to explore the deepest questions of the universe. This is goal and core strength or oriented thinking at its finest example. He asked himself, what are my core strengths? What can I still do? What matters most to me? And then he built his entire life around those answers. When he lost the ability to write equations by hand, what did he do? He didn't stop. He developed the ability to do complex calculations entirely in his head. When speaking became difficult, he adopted. How he communicated with colleagues was completely changed after that. When he lost his voice, he had pneumonia, I think, in 1985. He embraced the voice synthesizer. The computerized voice became iconic. It became part of how the world recognized him. But here's the lesson that Sudipto sir and I really want people to grasp. Hawking's transformation wasn't about positive thinking or just staying optimistic. It was much deeper. It was about a fundamental shift in where he drew his sense of urgency of action from. Some people think I can't do physics anymore because I can't write. And he said, I can still do physics. I just need to find a different way. Do you see the difference? One statement gives all the power to circumstances. The other statement claims power despite these circumstances. And in this book, we break down the specific mental shifts that enable this kind of transformation. Because it's not magic, it's not superhuman willpower, it's a learnable set of skills and perspectives. One of the key shifts is moving from I need perfect conditions to succeed to I will have work with whatever conditions I have. Another crucial shift is focusing on what you can control rather than what you cannot. Hawking couldn't control ALS, He couldn't control the progressive loss of physical function, but he could control where he directed his attention, how he spent his mental energy, what questions he chose to explore. And here's something really important that we emphasize in this book. This isn't about denying reality or pretending circumstances don't matter. Hawking didn't pretend he wasn't sick. He acknowledged this reality fully, but he refused to let that define his limits or his actions. So that's the beautiful thing. The practical lesson for our viewers is this: whatever external condition you have, which you're facing right now, whether that is lack of resources, lack of support, health challenges, economic difficulties, that is not the final word. That condition cannot dictate what you're going to achieve in life. And so, in this book, we provide specific exercises to help you identify what are your core strengths, separate them from your circumstances, and build a goal oriented life around them. We show you how to shift from asking, what do I need from the world to succeed, and start asking, what do I have within me that I can leverage right now. And when you make that shift, when you start working with whatever you have right now, that's when extraordinary things become possible. That's when you move from becoming a victim of circumstances to becoming an architect of outcomes, even with all these constraints. That's what this chapter is about.
Unlock the power of life without if. In Life Without If, we dive into powerful concepts that reshape the way we think and live. Minimize negative ifs. Break free from limiting beliefs and step into possibility. Get ready to think bigger, act braver, and live with purpose.
That's truly awesome, Mr. Joy. Very well explained. Thank you so much for that again. Let me come to my third question. Most of us recognize moments when we have waited for someone else's approval or for conditions to be perfect before pursuing our dreams. What practical strategies can someone implement in today's life to start shifting from seeking external validation to becoming a goal or core strength oriented person? How can people identify their true core strengths and use them to overcome their obstacles on their way? Over to you.
Yes, this is crucial, because understanding concepts is great. Being inspired by stories is wonderful. But at the end of the day, you need to ask yourself, okay, what do I actually do different tomorrow when I wake up? And this is something which we have emphasized throughout the book. You need to reflect, you need to catch yourself in the act when you seek external validation. It's harder than it sounds because we are so used to it that it feels natural. So, you know what you need to do? For an entire week, just think, catch yourself every time you're about to make a decision. Pause, ask yourself, am I making this choice because it aligns with my goals and values, or am I making it because I'm trying to get approval from someone else? Notice the pattern, don't judge yourself. Just observe, make points. And you know what? Most people are shocked when they realize how often they are outsourcing their decision making. They are shocked by how many of their choices are actually about managing other people's opinions and expectations rather than pursuing your own goals. Next, you need to get crystal clear on what your actual goals are. I've always maintained that. Even in the last session which we had, we spoke about this. It's not a goal is not what you think you want or what your parents want for you or what looks impressive on social media. What do you actually want? So in this book, we walk you through a specific process for clarifying this. Here's a quick version. Imagine you're at the end of your life looking back. What do you want to have accomplished? What do you want to have experienced? What do you want to be remembered for? Write this down. Be honest. Nobody else needs to see it. So now you know what you want, what your goal is. Third, you need to identify your core strengths. I'm not talking about your resume skills over here. I'm talking about the deeper qualities that make you who you are. Are you persistent? Are you creative? Are you good at connecting with people? Can you see patterns that others miss? Are you calm under pressure? And we have a powerful exercise as well in the book. Think about a time when you overcame a significant challenge. What internal resources did you draw on? What quality showed up during difficult times? And these are hints about what your core strengths are. Now, once you've identified your goals and your core strengths, the next is the game changing question. How can you use your strengths to move towards your goals regardless of the current circumstances? Let's take an example over here. Say your goal is to start a business, but you don't have a lot of money. So that's an external condition. If you're dependent on that, you'll say, I can't start a business without capital. But if you focus on being goal and core strength oriented, you'll ask, what are my core strengths? How can I leverage them to overcome the lack of capital? Maybe you're great at building relationships. So can you find a partner or a collaborator on this project? Maybe you're creative. So can you find a business model that requires minimal upfront investment? Maybe you're persistent. So, can you bootstrap and grow slowly? Now you see how these questions change everything. Instead of being stopped by the external condition, you're using your internal resources to navigate around it. Next strategy, you need to practice making decisions based on your internal compass. Start small. Maybe it's choosing what to wear without asking anyone's opinion. Maybe it's trying a new hobby, even though nobody you know is interested in it. The key is to build muscles, and in your body, like when we work out, we focus on muscles, our arms, our legs, shoulders, chest. So in this case, we are working on a decision making muscle. Every time you make a choice based on your values rather than the expectations of others, you strengthen this muscle. Every time that you act despite not having full approval of others, you prove to yourself that you can survive and maybe even thrive without constant external validation. Next, in this book, we provide a whole framework for this. You know, Stop seeing obstacles as proof that you can't succeed and start seeing them as puzzles to solve using your core strengths. Like in the case of Hawking, when he lost his ability to write, that was an obstacle, but he reframed it. How can I do theoretical physics without writing? He developed his visualization skills. There's another powerful tool in the book. It's what we call the core strength inventory. List out 10 of your key strengths, then next to each one, write down how you could potentially use that strength to overcome your current obstacles. So once again, now you have a resource bank with you. What strengths do I have? How can I leverage those strengths to achieve my goals by overcoming the current conditions? And you're already taking the small steps required to solve the big problems. You need to stop being dependent on approval from others. Get independent. That doesn't mean you do not value inputs from others. It means that you just are not dependent on their approval. you know so you, for that, first, it's easy for me to say it, but for you not to be dependent on others approvals, first you need to identify whose approval you're dependent on the most. Is it your parents, your spouse, your boss, your friends? Once you identify this, start taking small actions in your life without seeking their approval first. Not rebellious actions, just small independent ones. Connect with your why. Why do your goals matter to you? Not to anyone else, just to you. And when your why is strong enough, external conditions become less important. So in this book, we have exercises that help you dig deep into your why. Surface level answers aren't enough for real change. You need to get to the core of what drives you. And that is what Sudipta sir and I have given you in this book, the way to shift from external condition dependent to goal and core strength orientation. This isn't a one time event, it's a practice. It's something you work on every single day. Some days you'll nail it, some days you'll not. That's okay, that's normal. The key is to keep practicing, keep catching yourself when you're wrong, keep redirecting your focus, and eventually the roadmap which you get in this book is so detailed and strong that you achieve your goals, you stop being at the mercy of circumstances and start being the driver of your own destiny.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Joy. Very well explained again. Now, I think we have done with the chapter number 5. Let us move into the chapter number 6 of the amazing book, Life Without If. My first question on chapter number 6 is, what I observed is that the difference between reactive and proactive mindset can literally determine whether someone shapes their future or simply responds to whatever life throws at them. Mrs. Joy, can you please help our viewers understand what it really means to have a reactive mindset and why so many people find themselves constantly putting out fires instead of preventing them in their first place? Over to you.
This chapter is very relevant from the point of where we are as a society right now. If you look around, most people are living in a crisis mode. They are not planning, they are not preparing, simply reacting to whatever comes at them, and that is exhausting. let me describe what a reactive mindset really looks like. And I'll bet you'll recognize this pattern either in yourself or in people around you. There's that person who's always scrambling, always putting out fires, always dealing with emergencies. That if you actually think honestly, you could have prevented those emergencies. The reactive person doesn't check their car's oil until the engine light comes on. They don't think about their health until they get a scary, you know, condition or or diagnosis. They don't work on their relationships until their partner is threatening to leave. They don't update their skills until they are suddenly unemployed or at the risk of losing their jobs. Everything is a crisis because nothing is anticipated. They just simply react to whatever is happening around them, to them. Now, here's what makes this mindset so tricky. Being reactive feels productive, actually. Because these people are always busy, always dealing with something, always in motion. There's this adrenaline rush that comes with crisis management. At times it can even feel heroic, like you're saving the day. But the truth is, reactive living is expensive. It's expensive financially because emergencies cost more to fix than just regular maintenance. It's expensive emotionally because constant crisis mode is stressful. And it's expensive in terms of opportunity because when you're always putting out fires, you never have enough time to build something meaningful. you know think about someone who's always running late. They wake up late, they rush through the mornings getting ready, speed to work, they arrive at work stressed. What is that? That's reactive living. But what would a proactive person do? They would go to bed earlier, set multiple alarms, prepare things the night before, rather than just keep on hitting snooze and then scrambling at the last moment. you know think about it. Why do so many people get stuck in a reactive pattern? That's because of short term thinking. When you're focused only on immediate comfort or relief, you make choices that feel good now but can create big problems later. For instance, in normal life, a person who's reactive will choose to watch another episode on Netflix instead of, just preparing for tomorrow's meeting and sleeping on time. That feels good in the moment, but what happens the next day? They're scrambling and stressed. The reactive person will avoid a difficult conversation today because it's uncomfortable. Feels good now, but eventually the problem grows and might even explode. This is just emotional reactivity where you try to slow down, but you have no control on the steering wheel. So, in this book, Sudipto sir and I identify the key traits of a reactive mindset, and we guide you about how you identify those traits in yourself and how you go ahead correcting them. Whether that is being impulsive, whether there is lack of self reflection, which is very, very important for any task and any success in life. You cannot just move from one situation to the next, repeat the same pattern. What will happen if you repeat the same pattern? You make the same mistakes. And then you ask yourself, why does this keep happening to me? Because reactive living is a cycle that's hard to break. When you're always in crisis mode, you don't have time or energy to plan anything. When you don't plan, what happens? More crises happen. When more crises happen, you have even lesser time to plan. So this is a vicious cycle. Whether it causes stress, whether it causes failure, reactivity is just not the way to live life. So we identify the key traits of a reactive person and of a proactive person, do self reflection exercises to analyze where you are on that scale, and then move you towards the correct spectrum, the correct end of the behavioral continuum. What is the correct spectrum? Look at proactive people. They anticipate challenges ahead and prepare for them. They make choices today that set them up for success tomorrow. It's like a proactive person plays chess while a reactive person is ideally playing checkers at the same time. So the proactive guy is actually several moves ahead instead of just responding to the current situation. And this shift is a very powerful transformation, which is actually very easy to make. If you just take the time to analyze, to reflect on yourself, and to take the right small steps and actions which are required for success. And that is what, as I keep on repeating myself, this book is all about. It's about giving you the blueprint to move from being reactive wherever you are on that scale. You might be very reactive or just borderline. But once you analyze and self reflect where you are, ask yourself the right questions, take the right steps and action, you're going to move towards being proactive. And that is a big change for life. We walk you through it. There's no reason to panic or to just keep on asking, okay, yeah, but how do I do it? The steps are all there, the blueprint is all there. You just need to pick up this book, A Life Without If, read it, understand this chapter, and you'll succeed. And that's what we honestly want for everyone. Not a life of constant crisis management, but a life of intentional creation, which we call living by design, not by default. Do not put out fires all day, but build something meaningful. That's the power of shifting from being reactive to being proactive.
Unlock the power of life without if. In Life Without If, we dive into powerful concepts that reshape the way we think and live. Frenemism. Collaborate even with rivals to spark growth and innovation. Get ready to think bigger, act braver, and live with purpose.
Thank you, Mr. Joy. That was yet another very, very elaborate and insightful explanation. Let me come to the next question. In your book, there is a mention about John McEnroe as well. There is no doubt that John McEnroe is remembered as one of the greatest talents of tennis game. But on the other hand, he is also known for his explosive temper and outbursts on the court. His transformation from a volatile player to a respected broadcaster and mental health advocate is really, really remarkable. I would like to request you just to explain on what can our viewers learn from his journey about taking control of their emotional responses and developing a very, very true self mastery on this field.
Oh man, the John McEnroe story is so perfect for this chapter, because this story shows us that transformation is possible, even for a guy like him. I mean, if you think about it, he was completely defined by his reactive behavior. I mean, we are talking about a guy whose tantrums were legendary. More than his tennis brilliance, his catchphrase became, you cannot be serious. His yelling on the ground. I mean, what struck me most was not just about how reactive he was during his playing career, but how completely he embodied every trait of a reactive mindset. And then he transformed. So that can give hope to anyone and everyone who struggles with emotional reactivity. Now, let's paint a picture over here of the peak reactive John McEnroe. Here's a guy with incredible talent, arguably one of the best tennis players of his generation. But his emotions were completely in control of him, not the other way around. A bad call by the umpire, explosion. A noise from the crowd, racket thrown at them. An opponent he thought was cheating, complete meltdown over there, right there on the court. Now, maybe in the moment he probably felt justified. He must have thought this umpire is wrong. I'm just standing up for what's right. Or these people don't understand the pressure I'm playing under. That's classical reactive thinking. Your emotions control your actions, not the other way around. What did it cost him? A lot. Penalties, fines, damaged reputation. He lost matches. His relationships were strained. I mean, his reactivity was literally preventing him from achieving his full potential. That is self sabotage. In his career, he was stuck in that loop, the reactive loop. Something or the other would trigger him emotionally and he would explode. There would be consequences. Later, he would feel bad. But next day, another trigger, the same pattern would repeat itself over and over. And how many of us have patterns like this? Think about it. Maybe we don't throw tennis rackets on people, but then we snap at our family when we are stressed. Some of us make impulsive purchases when you're feeling down. or say things in anger that we regret later. So these are different behaviors, but it's the same pattern, being reactive. Now, what happened with McEnroe? Once his playing career ended, he had to confront something that he'd been able to avoid as a player. His behavior wasn't working for him anymore. As a broadcaster, he couldn't throw tantrums. He had to develop a different way of operating. And this is when he made a shift from reactive to proactive. Instead of just trying to suppress his reactions or be good, he did something smarter. He started to get curious. He started asking, why do I react this way? What's happening in me when I feel triggered? And that is developing self awareness, which Sudipto sir and I repeat and ask all our readers to do over and over again, being self aware, self reflecting. It's the foundation of actually moving from being reactive to proactive. You cannot change patterns that you're not aware of. You can't manage emotions that you don't understand. In the case of McEnroe, he worked with therapists, he learned about mindfulness, he analyzed and realized his triggers, and then he started working. And then when he became more proactive, he learned to expand that space, pause the triggers, choose his response smartly, be responsible for his actions. And that was revolutionary. He eventually reclaimed his power. He didn't become a different person. He was still passionate, still intense, still had strong opinions. But now he learned to channel that intensity productively, not destructively. He's proactive with his passion, not reactive with his weaknesses. In this book, we break down exactly how you can make this shift. We teach you how to identify your reactive triggers, how to develop alternate responses to them, how to start planning in advance, how to be proactive. Transformation requires hitting a wall at times. You can be reactive and face its consequences, but eventually you need to transition if you want to achieve true success. It's like a wake up call. We emphasize that in this book. You don't have to wait for a crisis to start making changes. You can choose transformation right now, today, before being reactive can cost you something important that you really care about. You know, think about Macro once again. He has become an advocate for mental health and emotional intelligence. He actually talks openly about his journey. He's now helping others understand that emotional reactivity isn't a character flaw, but it's a pattern in behavior. And once we learn to identify the patterns, we can learn to unlearn them and replace them with better ones. So, this book will provide you with specific techniques that McEnroe and others have used and that are so easy that anyone can implement them. So, we also teach how to rehearse your response, how to identify, analyze, self respect, and then learn to self control. So, these are the basic things that this chapter talks about. And obviously, I cannot speak everything in this short video call. The chapter is much more detailed. It's about learning to work with yourself rather than against yourself. You know, and if McEnroe can do it, if someone whose reactive patterns were literally broadcast worldwide can transform, then anyone can. That is the message of hope which we want to share in this chapter.
That's again a very, very insightful explanation. Thank you so much, Mrs. Joy, for answering to each of these questions in such an elaborate and insightful manner. I'm sure our viewers are getting benefit of these explanations. I'm sure they are picking up each of these learnings which has been given in the book Life Without If. Mr. Joy, I think I'm coming to the concluding question for our today's episode. Let me come to the question now. I'm sure by now, after watching the previous episodes of BookFlix Live and our today's episode, many of our viewers probably would have recognized their own reactive patterns in their own lives, whether it's impulsive decisions or emotional outbursts or constantly feeling like they are behind a curve.
Of course, I'll give you a few steps, actionable steps that can create real and lasting change if you want to move from being reactive to being truly proactive. This book has a lot. I'll give you a few steps right now. One strategy is the foundation, learning to pause. That is the space between something happening and you immediately responding to it. Right now, if you're very reactive, there is no gap. Something happens, you react instant, automatic, and later regret. So let's start small, Let's take a small pause before every reaction. Count till three in your mind. One, two, three, then respond. Now, this sounds very simple, but what you're actually doing, you're training your brain. You're training your brain that you have a choice in how you respond. You're interrupting the automatic reactive pattern. And once you get good at creating gaps in small situations, you start applying it to bigger, difficult situations. Next strategy is identify your top three triggers. Situations that make you very reactive. Maybe it's when someone criticizes you. Maybe it's when you feel you are rushed. Maybe it's when things don't move according to how you had planned. Write these down, your top three triggers. And then individually practice. Let's say your trigger is feeling criticized. If someone criticizes you, what is your reactive response? It might be getting defensive, making excuses, or counterattacking and arguing with them. What is a proactive response? Pause, ask questions to clarify, thank the person for their feedback, and then decide what action you need to take now. So if you map this out ahead of time, you're essentially creating a new program for your brain to run when that trigger shows up. You're not trying to change in the heat of the moment. That is really hard. You need to prepare in advance. That is really easy. So it's like being emotionally literate. You just know when you're going to feel bad, triggered, aggressive, and then you make it stop. So that is another strategy which I could talk about. Another one is create proactive systems, structures that you put in place during calm times that prevent crisis during reactive or stressful times. For example, in regular life, if you tend to stress eat, when you're reactively, when you're upset or sad or down, a proactive system might be keeping only healthy food in your house. So even if you do stress eat, you're not harming yourself in the long run. So see how this works. You're making decisions during proactive times that protect you during moments when you're reactive. You're working with your human nature instead of trying to rely on only willpower in tough situations. So it's easier that way. You give yourself flexibility about your response. Another strategy can be where you imagine, your future self dealing successfully with these reactive triggers. You mentally rehearse being proactive. Athletes do this all the time. They visualize executing their sport perfectly before the competition. You can do the same thing with your reactive situations. Before a difficult conversation or discussion with someone, spend 5 minutes visualizing yourself staying calm, listening, responding thoughtfully. Your brain doesn't fully distinguish between when you're imagining experiences and when you are experiencing real ones. So this actually prepares you for success. So there are so many steps that you can implement very easily. Small actionable steps that take you from this end of the behavioral continuum of being reactive to moving to the best part of this continuum, that is being proactive all the time. And for that you need to open the book, read the chapters, self respect or self reflect, and then practice it. Some days you'll nail it, some days you'll not. That's normal, that's human. The key is to keep practicing, keep learning, identify where you are and what are the steps that you need to do to improve, and then it's a matter of time. This book gives you a complete transformation plan with daily practices, reviews which are done weekly, and then month by month milestones. Because such changes don't happen overnight. These are not small changes, these are transformations. But it absolutely does happen when you're consistent with your practices. You need to internalize this shift, and once you truly become proactive instead of reactive, your entire life transforms. You're making conscious choices about how to live, how to respond, how to create the future you want. And that freedom, that's what life without if is all about.
That's amazing. That's truly, truly insightful. Thank you so much for that. Mr. Joy, we have almost come to the concluding part of this show, BookFlix Live, episode number 4. And I would like to thank you for coming to the show and for sharing this insightful details about the amazing Amazon India bestseller book, Life Without If. And thank you so much for coming in spite of the fact that you are not keeping well. Thank you so much.
It was a pleasure for me being on the show today. Once again, thank you to you and thank you to all the viewers. Keep the questions coming and looking forward to being again on the next episode. Thanks. Bye bye.
Dear friends, together let's thank Mr. Joy King Birje for sharing his invaluable insights from this amazing book, Life Without If. Dear friends, in the next show, we are again going to have the amazing, amazing leader, Mr. Sudipto Chaudhary, back again in the show, and he will share the further insights from this amazing book, Life Without If, in our next show of BookFlix Live, episode number 5. As we conclude this show, I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of you for watching this show. I hope this show was valuable to you. We are going to meet again in our next show on the next Sunday at 11 a.m. at our BookFlix Live episode number 5. Until then, stay joyful, stay successful, and thank you so much. Bye-bye.